Today's interview is with veteran John Giannini, born April 3, 1923. He served in the U.S. Navy. Today's interview is taking place on March 30, 2013 in Laguna Woods, California. Media Arts Center San Diego is conducting this interview on behalf of the Historical Society of Laguna Woods. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress.
Yeah, John Giannini, and I was born on April 3rd, 1923. And what else?
What branch of service did you serve in?
SeaBee's, United States Construction Battalion.
Okay.
They gave it a name, SeaBee.
SeaBee. Can you tell us how you got involved in the SeaBee and about your training?
Well, I joined the Navy, and next thing you know, I got on the train. This was not even a train stop. They stopped. There's no station. And got on there and it traveled for almost a day. We went clear almost to Canada, and then we got out there at this camp, and they had some exercises and stuff like that for a few days. And all of a sudden, he says, "You're going to take you to California." I said, "What am I going to do in California?" "Well, you're going to base down there." So I turned around, and they came all the ways down to. First, they started going north and south and then west, and I said, "What are they doing, confusing the enemy?" And finally we ended up in Northern California. And we got out of the train, and there's no station there, just right onto the mud. And I said, "Now what do I do?" They took off. And then I seen a guy walking and say, "Hey, where do you go when you get here?" He said, "Go into that big building there." It was where they held a dirigible at one time. Went in there, and there was about 50, 60 other men. They started asking questions. Said, what do you do?" I says, "I'm a baker." Does anybody drive cars, trucks? And guys put their hands up, and they gave them wheelbarrows. So I lucked out. And they said, "Now, you go up that hill that you came down off of, and there's a big brick stone building there, and that's where you'll be staying." So I went up there, and I went into the room there, and I said, "Man," I looked, there's bunks after bunks after bunks. So I went down about 10 rows, and we took the one up the top. And that day I went out, and this guy said, "Hey, we go roller skating." So we went roller skating. And then the bus took us there. We stayed there, and they said, "Don't go outside, they're having fights out there." I said, "What's going on?" The Army and the Navy guys were fighting out in the street. So we stayed in for a while, and then we finally went out and said, "Let's get the hell out of here." Went over to get the bus, and the buses had stopped running. So we started walking. We walked till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, sitting on the side of the road in a truck stop full of newspapers. He said, "You guys want to get on top of the newspapers? I'll take you into the camp." And that was a good deal. We got into the camp, and that was a hell of a start. So things like that happened. And coming across country, they went through New York. You can tell it was New York. And then they went about 2 or 3 miles, and all of a sudden stopped. I'm looking out the window, wondering why they stopped. And you're seeing people walking towards the train with baskets on their shoulder, come right up to the window. And it was a Nabisco factory. I see the sign. And they're giving us cookies. So I started with cookies. I had that many cookies in here. Cookies throughout the whole United States. And that was a funny situation. Another time we were going south and north and east and west, and I couldn't figure out, and maybe in those days they didn't have the railroad tracks they have today, So a friend and I were on there, and we were going so slow we got out and started walking with the train. As soon as it picked up speed, we jumped on. But we were going by, and there were the big humps of earth, the mountains of earth and there are these prairie dogs on them, and they were barking at us. That was something to see. Anyway, that's what an experience. So anyway, we finally got to California, and then they took us down to Oxnard. That's where the SeaBee's base is, and the Navy next to it. So that was quite a deal. Yeah. Anyway, they after about 2 years, I was at home in Pennsylvania on a leave, and then I had to go to one of the states that they made me go down there for. I was going to get out of it, and they put me in a room there, like they have in your banks. You know, they have little slot ways to sit down, and the guy raised my rank to first class baker. I said, "Why didn't you give me this before I left? I may have stayed." He said, another guy came and sat down and made me another raise. In other words, I got another $25 or $30 a month. I said, you know what, I'm out. I got married. I can't stay in the Navy. And so finally they gave me, I got out. Imagine that. But I remember taking me to the train to get to California. I drove my folks' car, and it was snowing a little bit, and I kept stopping and throwing the snow off the window. Got to where we were going, it was on a slope. The railroad stopped there, but there was no station again. It's weird. There were 2 or 3 people there, they're waiting for this train. So my dad and mom started taking off, and it was slipping because of the snow. They couldn't get up the hill. So I got on my suit, I got and put chains on for them. And that's the way they got it out. And then I'm on the way here. Yeah.
What duties you had as a SeaBee?
Yeah.
What were your duties as a
A
SeaBee?
baker.
Baker, and can you tell us kind of what happened in the
I
day
made
of
more
your job?
cakes and pies and biscuits, and in fact, I've got the book there that shows me making biscuits. You know, on a board. You know, we didn't have tents, so we had canvas that we hook up to trees, and then that's where we were to keep from getting wet. It was all outside. One time, I built a foxhole about this wide and about that deep. And I put boards over the top of it. Then I put metals that I could find off of planes that were laying down that got shot down. And then dirt. And at night, I'd hear a boom. And then I hear something coming down on top of my foxhole. In the morning, I noticed there were branches. That's strange. Next night again, boom. Some more branches, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. Now, one day I started talking to the Marines base, and I could see through the trees, and I see down there the planes are this way and that way and this way. And what the hell? I wonder what happened. He says we're getting bombed at night. I said, no kidding. I said, no, you're getting bombed here, and I'm here, and the noise is coming from up here. Send some of the Marines here, and I'll show them where the noise is coming from. They went up there and found 2 guys in a cave. They'd bring the gun out, shooting it, and going back in again. And they caught these 2 guys. So they put them in a room. They built a cage. They put them in there and said, don't go by them. So we're from the back, you can see them. They were big men. I said, that can't be Japanese. I said, how can, I've never seen Japanese. They're all shorter people. So later on, we found out that Japan goes along China and the space there, and they own land on the other, and they're Japanese people. And that's where they came from, from that across that order there. That's just the. And this one night, we had been as far as we can go, that they had taken over this island. And I was there, and I was outside, we baked at night, and all of a sudden I hear a boom. I said, that's a funny sound. Next day we found out they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, and the war's over. And that's what I heard. I was pretty active because I worked at night. The daytime I slept. But then when I got out, I was doing things, you know, going in the ocean, finding shells. I was a shell finder. And they had them, they called them cat's eyes. Some of them were called cat's eyes because they had a look dealy on them. It looked just like an eye on it. So that's what my deal was. And sitting there one day, I'm looking out and I seen something floating out that way, and about that deep. And I went out there, and it turns out there was a fishing pole made of bamboo, and what else was over there now? And a book. The book was about that big, that thick, that wide. And I dried it all out and started reading it. It was put out by Mayor LaGuardia in 1937. Imagine that. And I gave that to my daughter-in-law. She's using it for cooking a cookbook. That's something, bringing out all across the United States. You know, a lot of things happen like that. But mostly, we weren't attacked too often, fortunately. But in the book there's a picture that shows one of the holes that we were lucky they weren't there. So they couldn't get into the island. It was, instead of being sloped, it was big banks. And they had to get there, so they come up with an idea. They put us in small boats and gave us machetes. We're out there chopping down all the growth, you know, weeds and bushes. When they made enough room there, then they dynamited it and knocked a big piece off, and that's where the boats were able to come in and unload, see. That was it. Quite interesting. But at nighttime, I was out at night and you could hear them shooting, and that's where the bullets were going and hitting the planes where they had them all parked. And I said to the guy, why do you have them all together? Spread them out. So at least they may only get one, or you know what I mean? Anyway, then I, in talking to them and telling them what was happening at night, and then I figured out that they were up in the hill behind me because I heard them shooting it. And that's how it happened. So that was a good deal. Yeah. Came back to the United States, and they put us in and I found a cave. It was full of guns, Japanese guns, all brand new guns, boxes and boxes of tools and screws and bolts, and they're all colored red, green, blue, and on the planes, a certain color would go to a certain place. That's how they found out where they belonged. So guys found that out, we're all getting a gun, you know, free guns, right? So I carried that gun clear across the United States, the ocean, and I got to San Francisco and I hurt my leg. What happened, they told us to burn everything and get out of there quick. We're being counterattacked. I said, that's a hell of a note. We just put the first tent up that we got after months. And we had I said, I'm not going to burn it. But anyway, went to get on the boat, on the train, the truck. A bomb hit so close it picked the truck and me up. Went up in the air about that high, probably, maybe even higher. And the guys jumped out of the truck and went into a ditch. Me coming down, I went down to boom. When I hit the ground, I hurt my leg. And they had to pick me up, throw me on there. And lucky I was a cook, or probably had left me there. And then we got down the ship. They had to carry me on a ship. When I was there, doctors never looked at me. I was on my hands and knees walking around on the deck, you know. That's the way I did it. Then we used to go to another island and invade that. And then after we got that all set up and we got the airfield built and all that, then another island until we got, you could see China. That's how close we were. You could see it looked that thick, you know, the earth. Not probably 20 miles from it. And I'm out there, and all of a sudden I hear a boom. That's what's the boom at night. And I questioned that. I said, what in the hell is that? And we found out they dropped a bomb in Hiroshima, and the war was over. That's boy.
What was it like being around that time when the bomb was dropped and the war ended?
Oh, well, you know, you just hit the ground. You know, because the bombs explode this way. And there's a picture there that shows a hell of a hole. and that's what we used to be, about 2 feet from where my camp was. The first night we got there, they laid me down. This is your spot. I said, what are you talking about? This is the planes where they come in and out. He says, no, there are going to be no planes. I said, you sure? So I stayed on the ground. I didn't dig a hole that night. And the next day I saw buildings and all over the place. Turned out to be they were all farmhouses, you know, as far as you could see, but nobody there. They're all empty. People all left. So I went into one and walked upstairs and walked around just to look at the place, and there's a vases there. And I went in there and felt them, the dust like. Turned out to be people's powder when they die. We didn't know this. Each one had a different person in it, see. Anyway, I've been in there, and I noticed the floors had holes in them. You'd think people would fix them, for crying out loud, so they didn't fall through them. And looking out the window, I noticed houses here and houses there, and I figured out it was a farm area. And then I'm looking over there, and I see a gun sticking out of the tree, out of the house. And our tanks used to go right in them until just the barrel sticking out, and they were hidden. How about that? So when they left, the house fell down, of course. But that's the way they were hiding. Another island, we got there, and there was a man laying there dead. And to look at him to see if we recognized him, didn't recognize him, then we had to start walking away. And we're walking, and then tanks started to come by. We back out of the way, so we didn't get hit. And I heard a noise, and I turned around with my gun away, and here was one of our trucks. Tanks had gone in there and hidden in the bushes. And they then looking down through the houses here, and then you see one of them, they go right into the house until the barrel sticks out there and they're hidden. When they left, the house fell down. A good way to hide it, because it was all laid flat, and it was just farmhouses. And I went in this place and I found these guns and all that stuff, and ammunition and rivets of all description. And I took them with me. I got a gun and a few other things, and I took them with me. I told the guys about it. Pretty soon there was a line, there were guys going and getting stuff. And I carried that clear across the United States, and because of my leg, I could hardly walk. And I was up in a bank there waiting for the train to come by, so I come down to L.A. And I said to the guy, hey, you want something? He says, how do you like a gun and a bamboo pole, fishing pole? And I gave it to this guy. I never knew who it was, but I figured I couldn't carry it anymore, you know. So darn it, that made me, now that I remember, I should have kept it. That was the story. But we got down there, and see, from there they took me to, where the hell did I go? They took me some camp up there near San Francisco. And from there they took me to Oxnard. And that's where I ended up, SeaBee base in Oxnard. That was the last place. Yeah. And one of the guys said, hey, John, we don't need a pass to get out. He says, we go into the Navy section and then get out. I said, no kidding. So we both went out. And he said, I'm going to go see a girlfriend that I met here. I said, well, I'm going to L.A. So another man comes out there, a Navy guy. And we both got a guy stopped with a truck with a car with they had a trunk that went upwards. He says, if you guys want to get in the trunk, I'll take you down. So we did. We got in there and held, and this guy had a picture about that big to give to his girlfriend in San Diego. We're going down the road, and we get down there, and the guy said, look, I'm going to leave you off here because a trolley car comes out here, and it turns around and goes back in right to Hollywood Boulevard. I said, no kidding. So this guy said to me, you know, John, I don't want to go there. I'll meet you up at the camp at, tomorrow morning at 3 o'clock. Okay, I said, that's good. So I go down there, and we went in to get something to eat. And when we left this, God damn, he said, I said, what happened? I left my girlfriend's picture in the guy's truck. Guy picked us up, you know. So anyway, we got down there, we're trying to get back to camp, and we started walking. We walked and walked and walked, and pretty soon, we roller skated actually, because we've been roller skating, see? And the roller skates were at an angle. But we got there and a man picked us up that was delivering newspapers to the camp. That was lucky. Got to the camp, and then of course everything went normal again, see? But they put me in a building, it was about 2 stories high, and I went in there and I went always down to about the last beds, and I stayed there because I didn't know anybody. And that next day, I went out, and as I was coming back, I seen all kind of people around the front door there. And it's when you come in, and there was an entrance. And I said, what's going on? He says, oh, they caught the kid. Every time he took a Coke bottle out, another came out, and they caught him. So I said, hey, I'm getting the hell out of here. I went in the door, went to the window, and jumped out the window and took off because I didn't want to get involved. That was another funny one. And then coming back, they put us on a train, and all of a sudden the train stopped. And I'm looking out the windows. It said the Nabisco factory. And that's, people come up with baskets and gave us cookies. I put in it, my chest was like this full of cookies. Well, you see, I was a baker. So I did a lot of baking, and it was all done at night, and daytime you slept. So actually, the guys that I met knew me because I was a baker. And we were all friends, see. And they did their thing. They built roads, they built airfields. And I'd go there in the daytime when I'd wake up. I'd go there and help them even, you know. Now, when they build the airfield, after they got it built, then they put pieces of metal in about this square and with holes in them. And they weld them together on the after, because otherwise the ship panes will sink. See, it's all soft sand. And so I'd go out there and help them do that too, and just to be doing something and work during the day. And that's what happened. You know, then it was time to go home, and I was up on top of the hill. I said, I'll be damned, there's the city over there. See, we came in this side. We didn't know it was a city on the other side. There were ships and all kinds of stuff. So on the way back, I was telling the guy, you know, there's a whole city on the other side of us here. In the meantime, walking along, and I found, I looked out in the water and saw this stuff floating, and I went and got this fishing pole. And that was it. That was the time I came home. And I came home, and in San Francisco, I wasn't really home. I went down to San Francisco. I met a girl, visited her, because I wrote to her all the time, and then I married her. We got married, and then that's how I stand in California. I took her to Pennsylvania. She didn't like it. So we went back to California. Yeah. And then a whole year went by. I couldn't get a job. So my wife, we got married anyway. She worked at Bank of America, and next door was a store. What did I do? They sold different material. And says, anybody might hire my husband? And she says, yeah, there's a man in a certain town he mentioned. And I went over there and he hired me. Now, I worked on sewing machines because my dad had a big factory with 250 sewing machines. A lot of people worked there. They made 4,000 pair of pants a day. Imagine that. So I learned to run sewing machines, and I'd watch the guy fixing them and all that. He'd be going down and ask the guy what he was doing. He'd tell me, and he'd learn about it. So while I'm learning a sewing machine, I